Hello everyone, it's Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I hope everyone is doing all right this evening, I should say today. So let's hop across the pond and before we start running into the show. If you guys enjoy the content, if you find yourself coming here often, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course you can always support the patron. And I tend to say even if it's $1, it helps. So let's hop across the pond. There's an interesting thing that's taking place right now. There's the Labour conference in Liverpool. And as you can imagine, one of the key topics of conversation is Brexit. Now, I've done this, the Mad Max Brexit, because it seems like Theresa May, hair on fire, crashing out of the EU, full speed ahead. That seems to be what's taking place. Not to mention the EU is talking about having a hard border across Northern Ireland, which is a non-starter, which means it makes that much more likely. Not to mention, if that is their negotiating position, then it makes whatever else takes place from the standpoint of Britain, like, that's non-negotiable from the standpoint of Britain, meaning Britain will have a hard, or I should say the UK, would have a Mad Max Brexit as opposed to having a border between Northern Ireland. At the Labour conference, the conversation more so boiled around, especially around the Brexit thing, on whether or not there will be a second referendum. Now, if you've noticed, up to this point, Jeremy Corbyn has said no, that he wouldn't necessarily support a second referendum. Listen to this. There's been somewhat of a change in his tune here. Let's hear it.
Our preference would be for a general election. We can then negotiate our future relationships with Europe. But let's see what comes out of conference. We're a democratic party. We're very big. It's the biggest conference we've ever had.
And given that...
Let's see what comes out of conference. Let's see what comes out of conference. Now, my thing on Brexit, I've been agnostic towards Brexit. I think, like anything else, if you're part of an organization for 40, 50 years and you yank yourself out of it, especially when you're seems to be crashing out of it in the way that Theresa May is crashing out of it, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt. Even for the life of me, I want to call him Gordon Brown. I don't know why. Every time I see him, I want to call him Gordon Brown. I can see him in my head. Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson, secret recording, even on up to the fact that, look, Brexit is going to hurt, but, you get on with it. Now, the Brexiteers and all these guys are looking at this, somewhat distinct from the choices that they're making. So the pain is not necessarily going to hit them, but the pain may hit others that are in the society, especially if it's an issue of bleeding jobs or some companies that deal with trade across borders. I'm not of mind that think this is necessarily going to be easy or painless. I think that changing calculus on his part. Oh, and by the way, this is not willy-nilly. So at the Liverpool, they're going to have a vote or a debate. Let's call it a debate. Now, the debate at this point is a little neither here nor there. And it's been somewhat scaled down because they've hammered out an agreement or a Labour position today, actually. I'm going to give you the Labour position from the standpoint of Brexit, but ultimately the Labour position boils down to we will try to get a vote, meaning we will try to get an election. The main thing of this is an election. However, we're open to a people's vote if this situation is looking bad and if they can't necessarily get what they want from the standpoint of negotiation. Now, from the standpoint of people who are pushing for a second referendum, you can imagine this is welcome news. I mean, last year they couldn't even get anybody to talk about it, and now you have Jeremy Corbyn saying that I'm open to a vote based on a debate. Now, prior to this, and when he's talking about this, tomorrow they're going to have a debate. That debate, Jeremy Corbyn was saying up to this point, we were going to use to determine whether or not I support a second referendum. So initially, this was going to be a potentially contentious debate. with the outcome of the debate, the winner of the debate, Jeremy Corbyn arguing, look, we're a Democratic Party, we're a very large party, and based on the outcome of that debate, I will or will not support a second referendum. I would prefer an election, of course, but I will support a second referendum if the people in my party tell me to do so. Let's be clear. This is somewhat of an out for Corbyn. Like, it's one thing for you to support a second, a second vote and everything else. But if this looks horrendous, this may be potentially an out for Corbyn. Let me read the story, because there's something about this I also want to talk about that I think is interesting. No, that's not it. Here we are. All options on the table. So right here. After a grueling 5-hour meeting with Shadow Brexit Secretary Keir Starmer, more than 100 delegates from trade unions and local parties drafted a 2-page motion which members in Liverpool were expected to pass on Tuesday. The key sentence of the final draft says, if we cannot get a general election, Labour must support all options remaining on the table, including campaigning for a public vote. Now, this doesn't say you will get a public vote. This just says all options are on the table. It adds, if the government is confident in negotiating a deal that working people, our economy, and communities will benefit from, they should not be afraid to put that deal to the public. Campaigners were pleased with the elements of the two-page statement, including a promise to pursue full participation in the single market. Good luck with that. One anti-Brexit Labour source said, this is a clear movement for the party. It is. We're now talking with clarity of voting down the deal if it doesn't meet our tests, calling for general election, and if that's not possible, we want a public vote on the deal. You're not going to get access to the single market without the 4 freedoms, including movement of people. You're not going to get it. They're not going to give you a better deal out of the EU than countries will get inside of the EU. Not to mention all incentives for the standpoint of the European Union is to let Britain collapse on itself. I'm just saying. Here's another thing. If the European Union believes that the Theresa May government may potentially collapse if Theresa May can't get a deal, they are probably more inclined not to give a deal if they believe they can get a better deal with Jeremy Corbyn. Think for the moment of the Iranian, when Iran took the hostages, and Jimmy Carter. There's the picture of Jimmy Carter on the phone at the last minute, even as he's losing the election, and then immediately after Ronald Reagan comes into office, they give Jimmy Carter the hostages. That's my point. I'm making a point that there's a politics of this that's fascinating because it goes beyond Britain. It goes into what the European Union believes it can get out of Britain and out of the next Labour leader, especially if that next Labour leader says, yeah, we're open to a second vote. And they get that second vote and they decide to stay. Well, the European Union at this point no longer has to deal with the fact of Brexit. And testing the European Union's patience, Britain ends up deciding not to do it. Here's the thing. It's one of those things where, yeah, you have the option of leaving, but if you never take that option, do you really have an option of leaving? It's like a guy smoking pot for 40 years saying, look, I've smoked pot for 40 years every day, but I'm not addicted. How do you know? How do you know? Last point. Yeah, last point. You had a massive, 2 points. You've had a massive election. Massive. Meaning an outshowing of support from the standpoint of people voting on Brexit. You had a referendum. You had this direct approach of of what the public wants. Hey, we need to know what you want. This is not just us making a decision. We want to know it from you. What do you want to do? And all of these people came to the polls saying, this is what I want to leave. Or somebody saying, yes, I want to stay. And you ended up with a situation where it was almost split evenly, but just a few percentage points. That's fucking democracy. That's democracy on a big scale. It is a bit strange to turn around later on and saying, okay, this is too hard, so we're going to have another vote. Sounding like you're trying to get the vote that you want, as opposed to getting the vote that the public chose. That is dramatically problematic from the standpoint of whether or not you're a representative government. And in this case, a democratic government. Your public chose to do something. Get on with it, to take a British phrase. Your public chose to do something. If you're voting until you get the vote that you want, what is that? If the public says leave, then what? If the public says stay, you have 1 and 1, or you're going to have another one to split the vote. I guess I'm trying to make the point that it seems completely unfair to have this vote and then turn around and say, okay, we haven't even implemented what we said we were going to implement, but now we want to stop because it's hard. There's a lot of shit that's hard. You've had bad governance. I'll put it that way. Not to mention, the very act of governance in and of itself makes this extremely difficult. Any party is going to take every advantage that it has at its disposal to kind of gut the other party. And if that party is the Theresa May government, then Jeremy Corbyn is going to take every opportunity he can to gut the other party. Makes it hard. That's all I'm saying. That's second point. Jeremy Corbyn has a manifesto that I think is just fucking awesome. I haven't seen all of it. I've seen certain parts of it. How are you going to do that under a European Union? I guess what I'm getting at is, can Jeremy Corbyn affect what he wants in the standpoint of government, meaning spending and everything else, under the auspices of the European Union? And if that answer is no, then why on earth are you staying? Now, the Tory government, once out, will probably try to slash and burn regulations, seeing as they, like Republicans, cater to the interests of business. Corbyn, however, has a different plan with somewhat of a different issue here, especially if he's under the European Union, meaning if they decide to stay, that to some degree may put somewhat of a chill on the extent of what the Corbyn government wants to do. I don't know whether or not that's fully true or not. I've heard that argument made by George Galloway. Galloway is in the camp of getting out of the European Union. We are Britain. We can do it on our own. Let's go. And Jeremy Corbyn can't do what Jeremy Corbyn wants to do if Jeremy Corbyn or if we're in the European Union. So that's what's taking place from the standpoint of Britain. They're at a conference right now, and they're supposed to have that debate tomorrow. The debate is going to be far more scaled down since they've come out with the resolution, this agreed upon resolution. The resolution is extremely subjective. Just saying. So Jeremy Corbyn saying he'll back a people's vote and all this other stuff. The debate itself, I don't necessarily know whether the debate is still going to be determinative of whether Jeremy Corbyn is going to accept the second referendum, seeing as they've already agreed upon this particular thing. I haven't heard anybody countermand that at all. One last point, and I know I said two. One of the other people made this point that they could be penalized by certain people in other areas of the country that are not necessarily on board with this idea of staying in the European Union, especially after a vote was made. And damn it, well, I'm sorry, one last thing. Jean-Luc Picard doesn't like this. Patrick Stewart apparently has said, let me see if I can find this. I've read multiple articles on this, so I may, this stuff is being jumbled. But Patrick Stewart had some feelings about Jeremy Corbyn coming out saying he was okay with potentially supporting a second referendum. This idea of get on with it. Get on with it. Let's see, who's here? Needless to say, I don't know the consequences of this. I'll cover this story tomorrow after the debate to see what the debate came out with and who they chose in the debate itself. There's not necessarily a lot of meat on this bone. This is more just a heads up. It is somewhat of a big deal if Jeremy Corbyn decides to make a U-turn on this and back up people's vote. That would be a massive deal, if I'm being honest. But that's where we are. That's where we are. Joseph Pace, what's happening? What's happening, Joseph Pace? I haven't seen you in a while, man. I hope you're doing okay. And yes, Joseph Pace has been with me since I had like 100. Wow, man, it's been like a year. It's been like a year. It's a year and a half. Mark Benjamin, what's happening, Mark Benjamin? Mark Benjamin is going to be learning me something about crypto soon. I'm going to set a date, man. It can't be today, but I'm set a date. Norway style requests the EU, what, right, would take the pressure off of European leadership and take the pressure off the UK. I don't think they want that. Ginkmo or whatever, let's GK1. I don't think they want that. At least I don't think the European Union wants that. I think the European Union wants Britain to hurt. That's what I think. I think everybody in Europe's right mind, I'm saying that wrong. Europe doesn't necessarily have a reason to make Britain's life easier. That's all I'm saying. And the only thing Europe has to say, I've been saying this for like a year. We're a rules-based organization. And as a rules-based organization, we cannot change our rules for Britain. Britain was the one that decided to leave. It will be unfair for us to change our rules. That's all I have to say. It's a political answer. It's a political answer. What I would say is this. Britain will leave worse off than they were inside. And the European Union will see to it. I will promise you that. You write that shit in stone. James Morrell, rather have Brexit and Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister. See, that's just it. I'm agnostic towards Brexit. Jamal, how's the McDonald's in Kenya? I am not eating McDonald's in Kenya. I'm not eating McDonald's in Kenya. To my credit, we get groceries. Because the trip is going to be for a long time, we're going to be place to place. The goal is to try to get groceries as we go. But yeah. Look, I would rather have Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister. I don't live there, so take it with a grain of salt. But yes, as I see the world, I would rather have Jeremy Corbyn. As for Brexit, I don't know. I honestly don't know. Local comment that I am not here. I love the ironic tweets. The ironic tweets. Yeah, man, I don't know. Look, let me say it this way. If Britain is worse off for it, then no. And worse off is so subjective. Like, it sometimes is subjective. And because how long worse off? Are we talking about a year? Are we talking about 5 years? Well, what if after 10 years, because, after Brexit, Britain is doing awesome? I don't know what this is. The hurt will go to the poor. The hurt always goes to the poor, Kalita. That's always. There's my hesitation. That's my hesitation. Look, do you honestly believe, if Boris Johnson was going to be hurt by Brexit, that he would in any way push for Brexit? I'm talking about his class more than anything else. If the elite want to make it as painful as possible to leave, well, just to be very clear, though, I think this goes beyond financial considerations. You have true believers. I don't know if you guys ever watch the European Union, Parliament. Personally, I love it. I've watched it for years. I've watched it around the same time I started watching the Prime Minister Questions. It's a fascinating body, and they're true believers. Like, they're full-on true believers. You have some people who full-on believe in this idea of a European project, this ever closer, like this mantra sounds like the originals, family forever or whatever the mantra is for the originals. Always and forever, the originals. That's what it sounds like. This creed to live by, in which case they bind themselves together on. There's some of these guys that are full-on true believers. And those full-on true believers are going to take great offense with Britain. Not to mention Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage was a fucking asshole in the European Parliament. He was a thorn in their ass. Can you imagine every day you going to work and some guy stands up, I hate this fucking job! Hate this job! And I hate all of you! And I'm going to be leaving! And you do that for 10 years. Every day you stand up and do that shit for 10 years. And the people there are annoyed at you. They're pissed off at you. Britain decided they didn't want to necessarily even use their currency. Yeah, you can imagine that they may want to make Britain hurt. They may make them hurt. They may make Britain hurt. So, I don't know. I don't know. This is one of those wait and see things. I will say this. I think everybody from the standpoint of Corbyn would prefer an election. Corbyn, yes, yeah. Everyone wants an election. Everyone wants their hand on the ball. Jamarl, I'm just outside your hotel room. Don't freak out when you hear the door knock. It's just me with a pizza. You owe me $22.95. You know, the wild part, it's interesting here. The food is, so human labor here is inexpensive. It's cheap. So like if you're paying for a service or if you're getting somebody to do something, dirt cheap. So you have security everywhere. Like everywhere you go, there's somebody doing something because it's dirt cheap. For human labor. So if you get an Uber, it's like $2 to go all over the place. We tend to give the people a lot more money because we're annoyed at Uber. If you get on the bike of a motorcycle, I like riding around the city in a motorcycle. Like $3. I tend to give the guy like $5, and I gave him 10 because I got lost, so I gave him the wrong address earlier. It's an interesting spot, man. Jamarl exploits cheap labor. No, I don't actually. I actually give more money on the labor itself. I pay 2 or 3 times as much. So bam, fuck you, buddy. I'm saying that jokingly. The EU is a bunch of unelected oligarchs. That's true. Who would want them ruling over them? Which is kind of the reason for Brexit, right? But this is not me moralizing this from the standpoint of who would want X. This is more of a true or false. It's is it going to hurt? That's all. And you can say, well, yes, it's going to hurt, but that's not reason enough to do it. And that's fair. And I got to be honest, I almost trend towards that side. In fact, I do trend towards that side. Only because the public chose. The public chose. I am in this camp. The public chose. This is not, should we have slavery? This is not some bullshit stuff like that. This is, should we leave the European Union? That is a fair point to debate. That's a fair point to argue about. I would say human life is invaluable. But in this case, this has nothing to do with this idea of human life. The public chose to leave. Get on with it. I mean, shit, man. A dingo ate my baby. It's okay, dingo. You can rewind it. The stock value demands paradigm has resisted quality of life. Maybe we need an update. We do need an update. We do. China, Russia, and I think Turkey. Darren Aleve. More of the bad guys want us to remain in the UK. Therefore, I would say make sure we leave. I think you mean the EU. Yeah, the Tony Blairs of the world. That makes me more inclined to say, yeah, let's get the fuck out. If Tony Blair wants us to stay, then that has to be a bad choice. I'm joking about that. Are you afraid of lions, tigers, and cheetahs jumping out of nowhere? No, actually. No, I am not. Guys, I am going to do a poll. Do you want me to show some of the stuff from here? I've been hesitant to show it. Honestly, I've been hesitant to show it because, look, we planned this trip like a year ago. And I fell ass backwards into doing this trip. I looked at it as, I try to think, if this was like a week-long trip, would you show a week-long trip on your show? I don't think so, but this is not a week-long trip. And many of these things that I'm talking to people about, it's like political stuff. Beyond the political stuff, though, personally, for myself, one of the things I like about videos or travel stuff is I like seeing other stuff. I like seeing how other people live. Fascinated by it. In fact, that's why I travel. I wasn't sure how the audience would accept showing travel footage. So I'll put a vote at the bottom It might be one of those things where, yeah, there you are. Yes, Jamal, I would like to see what Africa looks like versus seeing on trade on corporate media outlets. You know, Rob, you know the wild part about this? I grew up with the only image of Africa being, what is it, Sally Struthers feeding a hungry kid, an African kid, sitting in the dirt with no clothes on. That was my image of Africa. I literally grew up with that image emblazoned in my skull. And it's like, because of it, I realized I was magnificently racist. Like not, you know, like I hate Africans, nothing like that. But when I started thinking of like the continent, it didn't even come up in our thought process to go. And it's like, fucking go to Africa. And in your head it's like, you know, everybody's dirt poor. And when you think about it, that's so fucking nonsense. But that's the image that you get. And as a kid, that's the image that's blazing in your skull. It's some shit that they program into you. And then you get here, and it's not that way. Like, and not only is it not that way, Kenya has been one of my favorite countries. I shit you not. Europe is more like is richer, is more expensive. There's some areas that are far more beautiful from the standpoint of the look of it, like when you go certain places. But there is an earthy quality to Kenya that is, it's hard to put my finger on it. If I'm being honest, it literally could be that a familiarity with people that I have no idea that I don't know. It's strange. It's very strange. It's, you know what it is, and I know what it is. I figured out what it was, but you're not a minority. Like, that's the first point. So you're not, you look like everybody else. Every so often you see a white person and you'll be like, yo, are we going to put some laws in to keep our dominance, keep these white people from coming to the country? I'm joking, I'm fucking around. No, it's weird. Like, there are parts of America that are predominantly black. But this is not predominantly black. It's predominantly black, but it's predominantly black at a scale that's countrywide, not citywide. When you look at billboards, those billboards got pictures of people who look like you. When you look at politics, everybody who's in office looks like you or family member. And I don't mean this in an exact way. I just mean this in mannerisms, how they hold themselves, the emotion that they give when they're given whatever they're saying. That is familiar to me. That is extremely familiar to me. So yeah, it's interesting. That's all. I didn't know you were on the fence about covering your excursions. Please share. Yeah, you know, it's funny. My mom, my wife was like, dude, your channel is just you. Somewhere along the way, the channel just became a political channel. But yeah, I'll share some of the videos. That's because all Africans wear fedoras. That's funny. Nah, there's just an earthy quality to it. That's all. And yeah, I like it. Ethiopia, go there ASAP. You know what's wild? I met this cat from Denmark, and he said the exact same thing. He literally said the exact same thing. He said, you must go to Ethiopia. And he was like, that is the birthplace of all of us. You must go to Ethiopia. We leave, I don't know how much your trip to Ethiopia, maybe. I could do a day trip. Mind you, if I do that day trip, I'm not doing a video. I can't do both. It's one or the other. But yeah, we went to a coffee plantation today, and I was interviewing the woman, but the coffee is so much work. There was this woman who looked like she was 60, and because she's black, that means she's probably 100, carrying like a 60-pound bag on her back of coffee. And I was like, oh my God, that woman could kick my ass. You know, like the labor, like it's so much labor to make this stuff. Like, it's like you get a cup of coffee and somebody had to carry that shit like from for fuck long. Like, it's amazing. I learned so much today. Look, I'll consider Ethiopia, but like I said, if I go, I'm not doing video. It's probably gonna be like a day trip, but because it's close, I don't think it's that far away from where I am. All of this, I think, is considered East Africa. So, all right, guys, I'm gonna end this because I need to prepare for the patron appreciation show at 5. Rob, I've seen your thing. I can't play that woman's video, but I may be able to cover it. Yeah, Rob. Yeah, I agree with you, Rob. I'll show it. I show some of the stuff, the footage. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some areas that are rough. But those areas are. It's like if you go to the projects in America. That's what it puts you in the mind of from Sandport and Nairobi, where there are areas that are rather lawless and rather rough. But Nairobi as a whole is just a city. Yeah, it's just a city. And their politics is in English, so that makes it more fascinating. I've been literally inhaling Nairobi politics, because you can hear it. They're fighting a VAT tax thing. They're talking about a 16% VAT tax that's going to hit the poor in this country. The corruption in this country is just as bad as it is in the United States, if not worse. The president's son is taking a percentage of a cut of Uber. So every time you ride Uber, the president's son gets a cut. This shit is fucking insane. I couldn't believe it. Well, because black don't crack. Funny part, when my wife and I went to this shea butter store. Like, my wife was looking for shea butter, and she's like, "We're in Africa. This stuff should grow everywhere." I can't find the shea butter, so we find a store. We find the shea butter, and there's a sign that says this is for aging and dry skin. And my wife, and I'm like, I think I hit both of these according to my wife, and she starts laughing, and she says, "I bet you guys will never guess how old this guy is." And the woman says 40. And we're like, what? Now, the reason this is awesome is because in the United States, this idea of black don't crack. But when everybody else, for the most part, looks like you, then the age thing, they're a little bit better at predicting how old somebody is. She just nailed it. She just completely nailed it. Yeah, Kickstarter, Anthony Bourdain style Kenya trip. I tell you this has made me want to travel to other countries in Africa. It really has. I swear to God, it has. It really has. Public domain, UN, grow some balls and take on the United States. Good luck with that. They're trying to put these other people on for war criminals. And you're like, well, wait a minute. Bush killed 1 million people. How doesn't that count for war criminals? Well, I mean, all right. This is the United States. I mean, come on. Come on what? Martian Villager, African labor is a pillar of the capitalist world system. Africa must rise, imperialism must fall. That means their wages need to go up. That's one thing. And what's wild about that, Uber forces down the wages. The government doesn't do anything for this because the government is taking a cut. Uber forces down wages. So a person will drive you from point A to point B and charge you $1.50. Out of that $1.50, Uber is getting 30, right there by itself. Like $1.50 to drive anywhere. And of that, Uber is going to take like 30%. It's amazing. It is amazing. All right, guys, I'm going to end this here. If you guys enjoyed the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. And you can always support through Patreon. No, Rob. I saw this. I'm going to check. Here's the catch. I can't show it because if I show it, YouTube may hit me for it. But I can still cover it. That doesn't stop me from covering it. So, maybe. Depends on how complicated it is to figure out. I mean, in the period of time. All right, guys. You have a good one. I will see you guys in a few for Patron Appreciation at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks, guys.